fourth and for now, at any rate, final presentation of our winter webinar series. We have one more to come on the 15th of May, and that is preparing your bed and breakfast in case there's an emergency and you find you have to hire somebody to come in and take over for you on a moment's notice. So that's something I'm sure nobody wants to even think about, but it can happen. So with all that said, welcome to Heather, and we appreciate all of your webinars to date, Heather, and look forward to this one.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to mute everybody in a moment. We have over to the right-hand side, we have a chat bar. So if you have questions during the session, please put them in, and I will either try to get to them as we're going through them if I see them, which I hopefully will, or get to them definitely at the end. If you guys have questions after the fact, please email Sandy or email me directly, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
You mean email Linda. You can
I'm sorry, it's Sandy and or Linda. Sorry, Linda, I saw Sandy. You know how when you're looking at specific things, you're
right, exactly. But you could email Sandy. She'd love it.
She probably would love it. She's probably cursing me right now too. All right, so everyone. So life after Facebook. Now, Facebook from an innkeeping perspective has been kind of the number one social media option that's been out there that the vast majority of innkeepers are using. It also has a high abandonment rate. As I've been going through people's Facebook pages and going through associations pages, I've actually been finding that it's a lot higher number than I thought it was. Whether it's a question of people not having the time or they're seeing engagement dropping, which I think is probably more realistic, because if you have a Facebook business page that has 1,000 fans, you know, realistically a very, very small portion are actually seeing the posts that you're putting out. You have to work a lot harder for those posts to get up there in the news feed, or realistically you have to, as I like to call it, pay to play. You know, Facebook wants you to boost your posts. Now, there are a lot of other social media platforms besides Facebook. But before I go on to those, I actually want to touch on something that I was talking to Linda about briefly earlier, is if you decide to not put a lot of marketing time into Facebook, which I do actually encourage to explore some other options out there, Facebook has an option called interest lists, which can help aggregate content from your association, from area things to do. And instead of having to come up with content all of your own all the time, you can use interest lists to aggregate the content together and be able to share things more easily. So if you were posting a couple of times a week, for example, maybe one post would be about you and one post would be a shared post from the Michigan Tourism Board, for example, talking about this big event that's going on locally. So it takes the impetus off of you to come up with your own fresh original content all the time. And it's also useful if you're looking for things to blog about. If you're blogging, using the Facebook interest list is great because it gives you some ideas of what's going around in the area with, you know, things to do, local activities. Maybe restaurants have pages that they're posting about all the time. They're having a brewery tasting, for example, or a wine tour. You know, they'll give you some things and ongoing events that you can snatch out of there and use for content and use for ideas for your blog. You know, so I wouldn't suggest abandoning Facebook. If you are using it, you know, keep doing it. Facebook is changing its algorithms all the time. They just rolled out another major algorithm about 2 days ago. I haven't really started to see the effects of that yet, but it will be significant. It's just so as you see changes in Facebook, just groan like I do every day and move on. But, you know, Facebook can still be a legitimate marketing tool for innkeepers, but it is a good idea to explore other things that are out there. Now, realistically, why are we using social media? From an innkeeper's perspective, you know, only 5% of it's about marketing. 5% of it's about advertising. You know, 45%, no matter what social media platform that you're on, is about engagement and connecting with past guests, potential guests, even current guests. And then 45% of it is about branding and search engine optimization. Now, Facebook, to go back, for example, helps very little to your long-term social media optimization goal. Most of the other social media platforms out there that you can use do very much help your search engine optimization, and it's a good idea to try to use a couple of the other ones. Now, realistically, nobody on earth, nobody human can use all of these social media platforms and use them well. What I recommend is find 2 or 3 platforms that you like to use, and concentrate on those. Do them well, and make sure that you like to use them. Because that I found, innkeepers say, well, I think I should be on Twitter, but I don't really like it. I don't get it. So it may not necessarily be a good fit for you because you're not going to utilize it to the best of your abilities. It's sort of like eating something that you're not that crazy about. People can actually tell by your facial expressions that I'm not that crazy about using Twitter, so the posts that I put are not going to be interesting. You're not going to be engaging with people. If you start using a social media platform and you find that you don't like it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, and there's nothing to say that you can't stop using it. But sort of like I had suggested with Facebook a couple of webinars ago, if you're going to stop using it completely, put a last post in there telling people where to find you. If you start a Twitter account, for example, and then you decide, I don't like it, I'm not going to use it, then put a last post in Twitter and say, this is not my cup of tea, but I'd really like to engage with you. Come see our Facebook page. Come see us on Google+. Go read our blog, because you want to give some direction to people that are still going to come across your platform. And I don't recommend deleting the social media account that you have, because at some particular point in time, you might want to revisit again. Say you had someone actually complain on Twitter, which does happen, and it comes to your attention. You're going to want to have that platform in place and able to respond to them. So you may not necessarily be using it all the time, but you might need it at some future standpoint. Now, YouTube is one of those things that very, very few innkeepers out there are utilizing, and they really should be. YouTube is very, very, very good for search engine optimization. I think one of the things that scared most innkeepers away from YouTube is the impression out there that, everybody needs to have a professionally prepared and professionally developed video. And realistically, that's not true. Homegrown videos are actually what's in. If you see the posts and the videos that are technically what they call going viral, those are the ones that are not the ones that have spent $10,000 on the video. Those are the ones that are real people talking about their businesses. Why should I come stay at your particular inn? Here's you as the innkeepers. You have your lighting well lit. You have a good camera that's on a tripod. Even a smartphone now takes very, very good video, and you can upload that. YouTube has a built-in free editor, so that if you're taking a video, for example, and your hand is shaking, that YouTube editor will actually take that shake out of it. It can lighten the video up. You can put text on it. You can crop it. If you have video clips, you can combine them. There's a lot in the back end of YouTube that most innkeepers don't know about, and they really haven't explored. And the neat thing about YouTube is you can use it in all of your other social media. You can embed it in a blog post, for example. You can embed it in your website. And long term, it's very, very good for search engine optimization. So once you've developed some videos, then they stick around forever. Videos and blogs, I think, have best long-term return on your investment, because once you're put out there, they're forever. Now, this is an example of a YouTube channel that Big Mill Bread and Breakfast has set up, and some are ones that she's uploaded. But the neat thing is, when you have a YouTube channel, you can also kind of import other people's videos. So if you live in Michigan. So from Michigan, if you Google, literally within YouTube, Michigan videos, Michigan tourism videos, Michigan lakes, things to do in Michigan. There's so many promotional videos out there already developed that you can utilize to bring into your channel, and they become then part of your YouTube channel. So you're utilizing other people's content legally and bringing it in to help promote your inn and your area. And the neat thing about a YouTube channel is it is customizable. So you've got your icon or your avatar here. You've got a full page or full-size banner. This resizes on a variety of platforms. So when you do put your banner in here, try to make it somewhat generic. Photos are nice because the photo itself will look completely different on an iPhone and an iPad than on a full screen actual desktop computer. The other thing you can put in are links to your other social media and to your website itself. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. YouTube is interesting too, because to go back to Facebook, if you are still going to utilize Facebook, you can actually import your YouTube videos into a Facebook tab. There's a bunch of different Facebook apps that you can utilize. My personal favorite, which is free, is called Woobox. It's WOOBOX. And I like Woobox because you can set a central video, sort of a highlighted video, and that one's huge. It's a lot bigger than the other ones under here. And then you can change this video at any time. So say you had someone come and interview you, you're in for a local, news broadcast, for example, and you had a particular video in there already, you could switch that out. So the newer video would be the primary one. Okay, there's a question. You would be selecting content from these interest lists yourselves, wouldn't you? They don't automatically post. Yes, you would be manually selecting those. So nobody else would be putting that content in there for you, so you can be very selective about what you're looking for. Now, one of the other things that I really love about YouTube is they actually have a function in here where you can create a cool video out of still photographs. So when you go into your upload format in YouTube, right over here it says photo slideshow. And this is a very, very easy system to do. So pick if you wanted to do a slideshow of all your rooms, for example. So I would gather all of your good room pictures together in one folder, start that up, upload it. So you'd upload your photos, and then you'd set them and it would become a lovely slideshow. It has some great effects that you can put in, very much like PowerPoints, where you can have fades in and out. And it also gives you a selection of royalty-free music that you can use. Any type of thing that you're looking for, if you wanted to do jazz, for example, rock and roll, classical. If you were looking for, down home, if you were having a slideshow of a barbecue going on, for example. And it also gives you the ability to overlay text and links onto the video itself. I mean, that content can then be shared across all of your other social media platforms. It can be embedded into the actual page on your app, on your Facebook app, but it can also be shared as a Facebook post. It can be shared into Twitter. It can be shared into Google+, linked into Pinterest. And it's a long term, as long as you optimize your videos, which is not hard to do. It's sort of like a website. You're putting text about the video in there, and then you're putting some keywords in. That's optimizing the video. And then it's out there forever helping to market your in. So even if you only spend the time to do a couple of videos, it's still long-term going to help your search engine optimization. And it's also neat because you can use that as a marketing avenue, so that if you had someone email you and perhaps they couldn't get to your website for whatever reason, or maybe they were only on their cell phones, and maybe your website, which is hopefully mobily optimized soon, is not yet mobile optimized, and they can't see your rooms, but you have a slideshow on YouTube, which is very, very mobile friendly, of your rooms. You could send them that link to that video, and then they could see what your bed and breakfast looks like. Now, Pinterest I love, and especially from the innkeeping perspective, there's so much you can do with it, and I would warn you in advance, if you have not explored Pinterest yet, put some time in your schedule, 10 minutes at a time, and keep to it. I've gotten people hooked on Pinterest, and I've also gotten emails saying, I hate you. And I understand, and I warn them in advance. The thing about Pinterest is it can be a huge distractor and a huge time sucker. if you're going to use Pinterest for marketing, you need to be very, very specific about using it, and you need to be very, very careful, because I know people, and I've been guilty of doing this myself, getting on Pinterest and you're doing some marketing and you go, oh, look at that beautiful caramel glazed, blah, blah, blah donut cake, and you're off and running on something else, and 2 hours later you look at the time and it's 11 o'clock at night. So just be cautious using Pinterest for marketing, because again, if you start getting distracted on it, you can get far, far away from what you were doing. Oh, then there's a question from Sandy, and I think she sent it to everybody. You can create a PowerPoint or Keynote presentation and then make that into a QuickTime video, and that can be uploaded to YouTube, absolutely. The slideshow feature is a little bit a better approach because there's more bells and whistles in the back end as you're creating a video. To take a video that you've kind of created somewhere else and then import it to that, it doesn't give you quite as much options. It does give you the option of adding royalty-free music to an externally sourced slideshow. You can do it either way, though. The end result is very similar. So thank you, Sandy, for adding that. I appreciate it. Now, in terms of Pinterest and videos, some people don't actually realize that you can pin videos to Pinterest, and not just YouTube videos, but Vimeo. And it's neat because you can have whole boards. If you were going to use Pinterest for tourism marketing, for example, to enhance the appeal of what's outside you're in, what you can do, where you can go, then, you could go out and find a whole bunch of videos relating to your area, make a separate board on Pinterest, and then start pinning those videos regardless of who created them, because you're using those, but you're not copywriting. It's not copyright infringement, but you're using that content to enhance everything that's out there. So bed and breakfast videos, for example, this is bedandbreakfastblogging.com. She was going out and pinning videos that other B&Bs had been putting together. And you can use that from a marketing perspective too, to enhance your area. Now, Pinterest is fun, and it is very much like an old-fashioned pin board. They've rolled out a whole lot of new options just in the last 6 months, all of them very beneficial to innkeepers and to business. And there's so much you can do with it. I think I could talk about Pinterest for probably 3 hours, so I'll try to be brief about it. One of the key things, one of the key questions that I've been asked about this is, in this particular case, 815 followers, and she's following 119 people. What I see a lot of people doing is that's flipped, and people ask me if that's a bad thing. If you only have 100 people following you and you're following 600 people, that's fine. It actually means to other people on Pinterest that you're active and you're interested in what other people are doing. It's the reverse of Twitter, where if you're following more people than are following you, that actually looks bad. So if you think about the fact that you're going out and following all these boards and following all these people, that's not detrimental. People actually see that as a bonus. Now, if you are going to use Pinterest, very, very good for search engine optimization. It's been growing up through the ranks of social media very, very steadily for marketing, especially in the last 3 years. I think it's going to keep going up there as they roll out more and more features. I've heard some scuttlebutt that they're actually going to roll out some additional things that will be helpful for tourism and the hospitality industry in the next couple of months, which is very exciting. Pinterest is interesting because you can add your own content, or you can pin content from other things. So if you went, Star of Texas, for example, if she went to the state capitol's website and she wanted to make a board of these are some of the things to do in the state capitol, she could pin photos from the state capitol to a Pinterest board. What you do have to be careful of is uploading photos, though, that are not your own. Some people on Pinterest make this mistake where they'll say, here's this beautiful picture of a lawn chair, and it's copyrighted, so they download it, they upload it, they say, hey, this is from, the capital of Texas, but there's no credit back to that. Pinterest will remove photos like that. You'll get a little notification that a particular photo that you uploaded had a copyright infringement, and they'll just take it off. They're not going to blackball you for this. You might get a letter from someone saying, hey, please don't do that. If you're going to upload photos, make sure that they're your own. Make sure that if you had a professional photographer take them, that you have the provenance to put them up there. But there's so much other content that can be posted and pinned from other content all around the web, and there's nothing really out there that you can't pin. So you could be posting, you could go to the White House website, for example, and pin a photo from the White House's webpage, and it's okay because you're not actually taking their content. You're sort of repurposing it and putting it in as a marketing tool. Now, one of the things about Pinterest, which is important, is you have all of these separate boards that you can develop. The number of boards apparently that you can, your limit is about 385. I mean, all of the people that I know that use Pinterest on a daily basis, I've only run into one person that has actually reached their board limit. And it's something like 150,000 pins is the limit. I think it would take the average person a very, very long time to fill that up. So I really wouldn't worry about too many. You can optimize all of this. Think of Pinterest kind of as a website. You have your name, you have your icon, you have a website that you can verify. You also have a blurb about here, and then you can have various boards, for example. So like Rooms at Chestnut Hill, for example, did a board of all of her room pictures. And as you add additional pictures to this, you can have more photos in a particular album. There's a lot of tips and tricks in regards to how to optimizing Pinterest, and I don't want to take up a huge amount of time just focusing on that. But if anybody's interested, I can share some information about that just in ways to boost that up. But there's so much you can do with Pinterest because it's visual and it's very, very good for search engine optimization. And just as an example of this, last year, if you Googled wedding hairstyles, for example, Pinterest boards were actually coming up on page 3. Now they're coming up on page 1. So they are definitely influencing the search engines for what you're posting. You can also embed your Pinterest page into a Facebook tab as well. This particular one is Woobox. And it also has Pinterest advertising. Because Pinterest advertising is still so new, I don't know yet whether it's worth it or not for people to invest money in it. It's something that we've been playing around with some of the lodging partners that I work with. We haven't gotten any feedback saying this is not necessarily a good way to advertise because the advertising actually seems to be very, very inexpensive, but we don't know what the return on the time investment and the monetary investment is yet, but we're working on that. The other thing that you do have is there's 2 different kinds of accounts. There's a business account and a personal account. If you started a Pinterest page on a personal account, you can transfer it over to a business account. There's not a huge amount of difference, although the business account does give you access to analytics, so you can see information about your pins and your pin profiles, impressions, repins, likes, clicks, and it also does give you that option, the advertising option as well. You cannot switch back. I did have that question last week. One of the other things that I really recommend are blogs. Blogs are also one of the hardest to keep up and maintain. I think as Linda well knows, there's a bunch of different options out there. There's about 150 different blogging platforms out there. Last I checked, most are free, some are paid. Realistically, it doesn't matter which blogging platform you use. It's 100% the content that counts. Now, the four major blogging platforms that most people are using are Blogger.com. Blogger is owned by Google, so of course Google loves its own stuff. WordPress.com, which is the free version of WordPress. Tumblr.com, which is primarily used as a photo blog, and WordPress.org. WordPress.org is what many people's websites are now based on. And if you have a WordPress.org website, you generally actually have a blog sort of embedded into the website itself. WordPress.com is sort of a free-floating version of that. The difference being it's free. You don't have to pay for installation. You don't have to pay for a domain name. Now, the great thing about blogs is if you have a freestanding blog, say your site was set up with regular old-fashioned HTML, you can customize it to make it look very much like your website. Oops. This is a standard HTML website. And right down here is a blogger.com website. So you can copy the background, you can copy the imagery, you can copy the fonts to make it, because you want to brand all of your social media so that it looks branded, so it looks as much like each other as possible. Now this is a WordPress.com where she has the blog itself actually as part of her website. And here's another freestanding one. She actually has, I think it's a Joomla site, and then she set up a freestanding WordPress.com blog. Now there's over 180 million active blogs. There's about 40 times that inactive blogs. But that number is still growing on a daily basis. And blogs are nice because in terms of long-term search engine optimization, they'll come up even further in search, even more than a YouTube video will. So I know that like innkeepers that have written blog posts back 5 years ago, when someone's searching about something specific, like say they're searching for the New Orleans Jazz Festival, for example, and they wrote that blog post 5 years ago, if that content in that blog post is really good, when people are searching for the New Orleans Jazz Show, they're actually going to come across that blog post, even though it's old and dated. When you make a change on your website, it takes time for the search engines to actually go through and search through and spider your new content. When you post something in your blog, it used to be it would take about a week for it to pick it up. Now I've found it now within almost 20 minutes. New content posted on a blog gets right into social media and right into the queue. Now, LinkedIn is one of those things that not a lot of innkeepers are using, but they really should be. Once you have a LinkedIn account, you can network with other people. You can find vendors, you can proof vendors, you can find potential guests and past guests in here. And it is great for networking. There's a big misconception out there that LinkedIn is only for job seekers. And you can utilize it from that aspect, because if you were looking for an assistant innkeeper, for example, and you wanted them to be tech savvy, LinkedIn would be a very good place to find those. Okay, and before I go back on LinkedIn, there's another question from Marcia. Do you suggest a separate blog or a blog within the web page? If you have a WordPress.org website set up, I would suggest the blog within it. Most of the other HTML platforms or other platforms, for example, don't generally have that blogging capabilities in it. And actually, just to use an example of this, some of them that do aren't necessarily going to help you much. That new system that Booking.com rolled out, for example, where they're giving people free websites and they're integrating something that they're calling a blog in there, is realistically not really a blog. It's basically a static web page. So it really depends on the exterior platform it's on. WordPress.org is the only one that I would recommend having a blog itself embedded in it. If you don't have WordPress.org, if you have a website on another medium, even some of those standalone ones, like the do-it-yourself ones, I would definitely recommend having a blog on a separate source. Okay, I hope that answered your question. Now, to get back to LinkedIn, LinkedIn can also help your search engine optimization. What I would recommend is, even if you guys don't want to actively use LinkedIn to optimize LinkedIn, to go out and network with LinkedIn, boost up your profile, because that profile can be set as public and can also help you as an innkeeper and your inn come up higher in the search engine results. All of the information that you put in there is Googled and spidered and looked at by Bing and Yahoo, and that also is just a little bit to help boost it up. So you could go in and you can optimize your LinkedIn profile, and then you could forget about it if you wanted to. But I would definitely recommend going in there, and if you have LinkedIn already, to go in and boost up your profile. If anybody is interested in doing that, I have some cheat sheets with some things that you can work on, tag a little bit at a time, sort of like Pinterest, otherwise you're probably going to want to shoot me, and just boost it up. And then if you don't want to be active in it anymore, then don't be. There's nobody that's going to hit you over the head and says you need to do this. Forums are another aspect of LinkedIn that can be very well utilized by innkeepers, but that's a whole nother discussion. But if you decide to look into LinkedIn a little bit more, check out some of the forums. Make sure they're the ones that are moderated, though, not the ones that are unmoderated. Those are filled with, unfortunately, sales spammers. The moderated ones are very, very good, though. Okay, and I will send the LinkedIn cheat sheets to Linda, and anybody that's interested, she can forward them to. Okay, now this is what LinkedIn looks like as an innkeeper to someone logged into LinkedIn, and this is what someone looks like that's someone not logged into LinkedIn. So you wouldn't have to have a LinkedIn account. You wouldn't have to even be logged in, but this is public, and this is actually showing up if someone searched for Dennis George, for example, or they search for the Highland Garden House Bed and Breakfast, his LinkedIn profile is going to come up in search. So it's helping to boost his search. And also there's links in the public profile as well that are helping his SEO. Now these are company pages. And again, these are optional. Company pages are free. You're not going to get a lot of engagement on them, but they are very, very good for search engine optimization. You can set them up. What's the guy? Guy Fieri, set it and forget it. I think that's him. Where you can just set it up, optimize it, put your photo in, put your header in, and it's going to organically help your search engine optimization a little bit. But there is a spot in here where you can post updates as well. So if your inn was in the news, for example, you were offering a special offer, it is one more place to put your content where it will actually help Google find that information. It literally takes less than 10 minutes to set up and optimize a company page. I do recommend it if you want to help organically grow your search engine optimization. It's kind of like, if you don't do it, that's fine, but if you do it, it will help you. And this is what a LinkedIn company page looks like to someone not logged in, but it also posts any recent updates. If you post an update on your personal profile in LinkedIn, it will not show up publicly, but if you show an update in your company business page, it will show up to people that are not logged in to LinkedIn. Now, Twitter is one of my favorites. There's a lot of innkeepers on here. There's a lot of innkeepers that loathe and hate Twitter. And there's a lot of innkeepers that absolutely love it and adore it. It's sort of, there's no innkeepers that I've come across that are like, yeah, it's okay, we kind of find it useful. It's either there's the love-hate relationship going on. I find Twitter hugely helpful from an advertising perspective because you can reach out and you can connect with people. All of the different platforms have different things in terms of how you communicate with people, where Facebook, for example, you really have to reach out and advertise the fact that you have Facebook and get them to come and like your Facebook page. Twitter, for example, you can go out and you could talk to anybody all over the world. So you could do a search within Twitter for someone that was looking for a place to get married, for example, or a weekend away in the Berkshires, and you could chat with them. You really can't do that on any other platform easily. And it's a great advertising venue in terms of the fact that when they changed how it was laid out last year, they gave you this huge banner space that you could take advantage of that you can change anytime you want. And they don't care if you put advertising in here as well. The only thing that I would suggest is if you are going to put a banner in here, make sure it's high resolution. I've seen a lot of inns put images in here that are low res, and it doesn't look that great because the images are very fuzzy and pixelated. But a lot of innkeepers aren't taking advantage of the space from an advertising perspective and putting in here anything here at all. I mean, if you think about your romantic B&B, how beautiful would it be for someone to come to your Twitter account for the first time and see, this gorgeous sleigh bed with, the full hot tub with a couple glasses of wine and rose petals scattered everywhere in full high-res definition on there. And, oh, wow, that's beautiful. I think I should bring my girlfriend there. So think about it from this advertising perspective. It also gives you a bio. It gives you links to your website. In this area here, the bio, this is kind of a cheat for Twitter. You can put in external links too. So if you had a blog, for example, you could put your blog link in this bio as well. It does count towards the character count, but it is hot, so people can actually click there to somewhere else. Again, there's a lot more to Twitter, so I won't bore you to death about it. But there is a lot you can do. You can have conversations with people, sort of like this one. You can reply to people. You can retweet, which means that if you came across this beautiful recipe, for example, or the Michigan State Tourism Board posted a photo of a beautiful Lake Michigan as the sun went down, you could repost or retweet their content. And similar to sharing something on Facebook, then that content would be seen by all of the people that follow you. You can also favorite something, and favoriting things gives two different meanings to this. Favoriting means if you went and favored a guest's review, they would get a notification that you saw that and you said basically thank you. And favorites also keep the list, so it's kind of like bookmarking things on Twitter. Buffer is something that's an external source, and I'll actually go into that at the end. If you use Buffer, it will actually add this into your LinkedIn account. And it also has direct messages, so you can chat with people directly. If you do decide to invest time in Twitter, and Twitter is probably by far the most difficult out of all the social media channels to use because there's so many different dynamics that Twitter actually doesn't tell you about. And it's a little bit complicated until you sort of understand, the fact that if I follow somebody, I'm not necessarily seeing all of the posts that they're posting. I'm only seeing the stuff that they're posting, their comments about something. I'm seeing a link to an article with the link itself that goes to the article, but I'm not seeing their conversations. In order for me to see a conversation that they're having with someone else, I actually need to follow the person that they're having the conversation with in order to see that two-way street. That's not something that a lot of people understand about Twitter, so they go on and they're like, nobody's talking to each other. Well, they are, you're just not seeing it. Now, direct messages is sort of another complicated thing that Twitter has that's very much underutilized by businesses and especially by innkeepers. And innkeepers, unfortunately, fall into the trap of doing this not quite as well as they could be. There's a lot of inns out there that will send out automatically direct messages that say, hi, thanks for the follow. Follow us on Facebook. I don't want to follow you on Facebook. I don't even know you. So it's not a personal thing. If you decide to invest in direct messages, there's an art form to this in order being able to develop a community and develop the proper way to soft sell on it. Is really realistically, it's an art form. Twitter just made some major changes to direct messages. It used to be that if I followed Linda and Linda wasn't following me back, Linda could send me a direct message, but I couldn't send her one back. We have to mutually be following each other to direct message each other. They actually changed that, so there is an option now in your backend settings where you can actually select anybody can direct message me. This is still so new, and it doesn't say it on your Twitter profile that you can be direct messages. You can be direct messaged. So I don't know whether there's the potential for you getting spammed a lot or not. I'll probably know more in a couple of weeks. But from the perspective of direct messages, I'm on Twitter maybe 5 minutes a day. I spend a couple of minutes maybe chatting with someone, a couple of minutes maybe reposting something, but the vast majority of the time I'm on Twitter is I'm communicating with each other by direct message, and people on the external side of that don't see that. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And there's also advanced search. Advanced search is useful because you can look for specific things. Say you wanted to get information about what was happening, in the heart of Michigan because all of a sudden it was on the news. There was a bomb threat. Like here, for example, we had a bomb threat at a local high school, and I saw it on Facebook, but I actually went to Twitter for trending information because it was the most up to date. But you can search for people within this. You can search for places. You can search for particular tweets within a certain date range. And this is useful because you can go onto Twitter if you've created an account and you can back search for anybody that's talked about your in. And I think a lot of ins would be surprised that they're actually going to find things in there. And it's usually, thank heavens, it's usually positive. We stayed at this wonderful bed and breakfast in Michigan, and here's the name or here's the link to your website. You'd be surprised what you come across in here. So I would recommend going in here, just playing with it a bit. It's hugely useful for content sourcing. It also has a list facility as well. You can also set it up so if you have a Facebook page that you're using, you can set it up to send your posts automatically from Facebook into Twitter. I do recommend doing that because while Facebook is not terrific for search engine optimization, Twitter is terrific for search engine optimization. And even though it's a feed, you actually get quite a bit of traffic both to your website, to your Facebook page, and to any other social media outlets that you're integrating into Twitter itself. And you can do some specific searches in here. So say you were looking for TripAdvisor, or you wanted to look for, articles about Airbnb. It has a search box in here, and this search form in here can be very, very specific, or it can be very, very generic. So anybody talking about TripAdvisor in this case, you would see all of their tweets together. And you can also do specifics. So if you were looking for something that happened within, 15 miles of Detroit, Michigan, anything that's being posted in there would come up. But you can also search for people. So if you were trying to do a hyper local targeted campaign, for example, say, bring your friends and family and we'll give them a discount off of, 10% if, you have your family stay with us, for example, and you wanted to connect with some local businesses and people on Twitter, it would give you the results from all of those people that were location-based within 15 miles of Detroit. So from the perspective of being specifically targeted, it can be very, very useful from that aspect. Now this is the lists feature, and the lists, what they do is they aggregate content for you. You don't necessarily have to follow a business to put them on a list. So for example, I could follow the Lake to Lake Twitter page by actually following them, or I could put them on a list. And the list would just aggregate all of the content that they put out. And I could go to that list when I was looking for specific information about something, and it's like one-stop shopping for content. So the list feature is very, very easy to use. It's very good for stalking your competition because there's also private lists. And if you had potential guests, for example, that you wanted to monitor, maybe some of them had started talking about they were going to go vacation in Michigan, and you didn't want to follow them, but you wanted to monitor what they were tweeting, you could put them on a private list and monitor those people, for example, and say, hey, this is the perfect time to jump on them and offer them something nice. So does anybody have any questions about Twitter? Okay. Twitter also gives you analytics, and there's also advertising in it. Twitter advertising, I found as I've been testing it for the last 6 months that I have had access to it, can be hugely helpful. It's not very expensive. I have an inn up in New Hampshire that we did a wedding campaign for about 2 weeks for them, and they got a huge amount of traffic to their website directly from it, and it only cost them about $30. So in terms of, realistically, is it cheaper to advertise on Twitter versus Facebook? Definitely cheaper to advertise on Twitter. That's something that you can set up campaigns and you can actually do some beta testing on them. And see what the different options would be without actually running the campaign itself. So if you're going to investigate that, I would say go into the back end of Twitter ads, set up some sample campaigns, and just see what you could do with it. It doesn't mean you're obligated to actually run it or spend any money on it. Now this is Google+. Google Plus is, how can I put this? Google's somewhat failed attempt to be competition to Facebook. Kind of the major differences between it are people don't like it. You can do most of the same things that you can do on a Google Plus page that you can on a Facebook page, but there's very limited engagement on it. There is some bonuses to putting things on Google Plus, but because similar to Blogger, because it's a Google Plus is a Google platform, Google loves its content. There's been various marketing people over the last year or so saying we don't know whether posting in Google Plus is actually helping people's search engine optimization, and that actually from their perspective seems to change on a daily basis. I do know from the analytics of about 100 B&B websites that I have access to that I can say for sure posts in Google Plus are helping their SEO. So from the perspective, or from my perspective rather, I can actually say confidentially, I think it does. Now this is very much like Facebook. It is confusing to a lot of people because it is similar to Facebook, but it does operate a little bit differently. It does have this update box where you can share what's new, you can do photos, you can put videos, you can put events on there that you can share with people, and you can also run polls. It can be integrated into some of the other social media and into other advertising that you have. And the major difference between Google Plus and Facebook, for example, is people like your page on Facebook, your business page. This is a lot more like the friends version, the personal version of Facebook, where you're friending each other, but it's a lot more casual because people put you in circles and you might put people in circles, and it actually has nothing to do with friendship. It has more to do with information. So for example, in here, in your circles, it just means you've kind of put them on a list. And if you think of circles as putting people or businesses on lists, it's a little bit easier to digest, what the point of that is. Because a circle, if you had, 15 people, for example, that were experts in the innkeeping industry, and you created a circle that said innkeeping experts, it would aggregate all of their content together for you. Now, one of the key things about Google Plus is if you put someone in a circle, they get a notification of that. So from the perspective of if you wanted to go out and sort of, find potential guests, find potential maybe brides if you offered weddings at your facility, you could go out and circle them and they would get a notification, and they generally go back and they check out who it is that circled them, and you're branding your business that way. Many times they will circle you back, which is good. They don't know what type of circle you put them in, or more specifically, they don't know the name. So you could put a bunch of vendors, for example, in a circle that says, I never want to use these guys, just for your potential, for your long-term reminder of these are people that I don't like or I've heard bad things about. They don't know that they're in that circle. They just know that you've put them in a circle. And you can remove them again. That's the nice thing about it. Now this is Google Plus, and because they have albums, again like Facebook, they do have higher resolution photos that you can put in. You do have the option of disabling people downloading the photos, which is useful. They do have some photo improvements. So unlike Facebook, which basically lets you only delete photos and turn things upside down, if you uploaded a photo to Google Plus that wasn't picture perfect, maybe the lighting was not that great, you can adjust the lighting. And so there was a question, is Google Plus able to be scheduled on Hootsuite? It is. I don't particularly like Hootsuite for Google Plus because it glitches a lot. I used to be a fan of Hootsuite until it changed its back end, and it's not nearly as user-friendly as it used to be. And because YouTube is also a Google product, they draw in, if you have a YouTube channel, they'll actually bring your YouTube videos directly into your Google Plus page, which is nice because, then it's all integrated together. And there's some additional things in Google Plus that I really like. There's a Hangout feature, which means it's sort of like Skype on steroids, where Skype you can have a video call with one other person. On Google Hangouts, you can have a video call with up to 9 other people, and they're all on video. And to bring it one step further to that, you can also have it taped. So if you were going to have a board meeting, for example, and maybe 2 of your board members weren't able to attend it, you could actually tape your whole board member session, and people could be located all over the United States or all over the world and participate in this, and you'd have it taped, and then you could send the people that weren't able to attend that link to actually see what exactly was discussed. It also has some additional features in that the taped Google Plus Hangout gets sent into YouTube, and it can either be public or private. From the public perspective, you could do interviews on this. So you could have, if you were an innkeeper and you had perhaps, a local apiary wanted to come on, you could actually do a video interview with him, and then you could use that for your marketing. So there's some really neat things that you can do with this. From the perspective of video calls, it's a lot more reliable in terms of not dropping calls as much as Skype does. How is Google Hangout different from Gotomeeting? Gotomeeting is more of a webinar style. Google Plus, you can do things like you can do screen sharing within it. Realistically, I do know a lot of people that do webinars through Google Hangouts. So I think that the major difference is the cost perspective. The resolution on shared screens isn't quite as high as Gotomeeting. That's also important too if it's something that people are going to review and watch later on. So I think from the perspective of, could you replace, Google Hangouts with, if you could replace Gotomeeting with Google Hangouts, I would say test it out and see what the results are first, but I don't necessarily think it would be a good substitute for it. Now, these are a couple of quickies. Snapchat is being used by the millennials. Instagram is also very much being used by the millennials. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about Instagram, other than the fact that some B&Bs are utilizing it. There's a lot of hotels that are utilizing it, and the hotels that are utilizing Instagram are getting business from it. I say this with a caveat that they're getting business of it, and they're also investing a huge amount of time and money into marketing it. From the perspective of whether a innkeeper wants to get into Instagram and actually spend the time, utilizing it and optimizing it to where they're actually getting anything out of it, I have not seen any innkeepers getting any return on their time investment on it yet. It's on my radar I'm looking to see on a constant basis whether I'm finding that yet, but I have not seen anybody out there that's actually getting a return yet. That might change. I mean, if I look at Pinterest, for example, 4 years ago, Pinterest was this really neat marketing thing, but there hadn't been a proven track record for the innkeeping industry of people actually getting anything from it yet. So Instagram, realistically, from a marketing perspective, hasn't been around long enough for me to say, you guys need to be spending time on it. It's fun to play with. Just like Pinterest a few years ago was fun to play with. I would suggest checking it out because I probably don't think it's going away, but from a time investment, maybe start an account, look at it, follow some other accounts of interest, but don't spend a lot of time on it. Podcasting is another one that I do know some innkeepers that are doing podcasting. Podcasting isn't technically social media, but it is good for search engine optimization. It doesn't cost anything, but people are primarily doing interviews. So if you went to a local tourism hub, for example, and then you had an interview with someone there, you could actually put it on. It's like a video recording, podcasting, and then you can send that link around with the recording to other, um, other avenues. Now, this is from Social Media Marketing Industry Report. I would recommend, if people haven't, go to socialmediaexaminer.com and subscribe to their newsletter. It's one of the very, very good sources out there for keeping up to date on social media changes. They have experts from all over the world contributing things, and when new options come out, they're not always exactly on the ball and saying it came out right away, but generally they'll tell people about it within a month of a new feature coming out, which is helpful because it does take time for things to come up. Now, to go through this, Facebook is still one of the top things that people are using. Twitter is at 83%, so it's kind of almost neck and neck with Facebook. LinkedIn's pretty high. YouTube and blogging are neck and neck too. Pinterest, I think, is interesting because 3 years ago, this wasn't on this graph at all. And over the years, it's steadily been working its way up. Instagram, again, last year that was about half, and it is growing. Social review sites, Yelp. I know we did the webinar on Yelp a couple of months ago. I would suggest claiming it and optimizing it. Forums, that's all kinds of forums. They're also including in forums Google Plus forums. If anybody is on Google Plus, we have a fairly active bed and breakfast community that anybody is welcome to join. If they need the address, I can send it to Linda and she can send it out. It's a great place to ask questions of other B&B people. Foursquare is not quite dead yet, but it's getting there. Social bookmarking is also on its way out. And then these are some of the things that are fairly new. Vine is integrated into Twitter, and it's short and sweet video that you upload into your Twitter account, and it's like 30 seconds or less. Podcasting, and then Snapchat. It'll be interesting because these numbers all change on a yearly basis, and it's interesting tracking this. One of the things that Social Media Examiner offers you is this free industry report every year. And it's been interesting tracking the trends for all of these social media platforms because they also do projections in terms of, who's doing what, where they're going, projections that possibly people had made last year that either never happened or things that happened that were unexpected. Now, if you're going to manage multiple social media accounts, this is one of my favorite applications. It's bufferapp.com. There's a free version and a paid version. The free version lets you connect up to 3 social media accounts. The paid version lets you connect pretty much unlimited social media accounts to it. Realistically, from an innkeeper standpoint, you only need the free version. I only use the free version myself. For example, I don't post directly to Facebook. My posts go to my Google Plus business page, my LinkedIn business page, and to Twitter, for example. They just rolled out a couple of days ago integration with Pinterest. It's still so new, and it's not quite as user-friendly as I think they're going to make it. But that's useful in terms of that's one of the very few platforms out there right now that they didn't formally have integration with. Now, Buffer App works a lot like Hootsuite in terms of the fact that you can send information out to multiple platforms at the same time, and you can also pre-schedule things. And Buffer App's neat because if you're on a web page, for example, I'm sorry I didn't take a snapshot of this, there's a little application button you can add to your browser. So say I came across this really interesting article, for example, and I'd hit the little application tab, and it would automatically take that content and a shortened link and put it into my buffer queue. And you can also, this little click down here, it says add to queue, or you can also say post now. So you can add things in advance as you're doing reading, for example, or you're researching Airbnb and you wanted to push out a bunch of articles or recipes or what have you, and then it would automatically set it into the time schedule that you want to promote at your convenience. So say you're doing all of your posts at 5 o'clock in the morning, for example, you're not going to want to post them at 5 o'clock because that's not when most of the people reading your information are going to be on. They might be on at 2 o'clock. So you would set, 10 posts up to go out, Monday at 10:30, Monday at 2 o'clock, Tuesday at 10:30, Tuesday at 2 o'clock, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And once you spent the 5 minutes pre-scheduling things, your content's automatically going to go out to your social media platforms, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So it makes life a lot easier to do. And this is what the Backend Buffer looks like. And it's very, very easy once you have things set in your queue to rearrange them. There's a tab here that if I click on it would let me edit the post, delete the post, post it now, or I could just drag it around. If I wanted to flip these two articles, the time periods they're posting, I could just drag and drop it. So in terms of applications to make life so much easier, Buffer app is, I think, at the top of my list. So good, we're right about on time where we should be. So does people have some questions for me?
Are we unmuted?
Let's see. Yes, we are.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions?
I guess the Buffer app is your answer to Jan's question, which was just before mine. If you don't use Hootsuite, what do you use? So you use Buffer app instead.
Yep.
So that answered that question.
Yeah, and you know what? Let me get out of this, if I can.
See, I'm almost thinking, this is Marcia.
Yeah.
I'm almost thinking my person who did my webpage, I think she must have used something like that because when I post to my Facebook, it posts things to my Twitter.
So yeah, she probably set the feed up that way.
Yeah,
And you can disable that if it's not working for you.
Heather, this is Sandy.
Yeah.
Can you recommend a good resource for how to speak hashtag?
I can. If you go to Google and you Google hashtag directories, I think it's the top 3 or 4 listings that come up have very, very comprehensive lists.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? So I'm trying to show you Buffer app, but it's not cooperating with me right now.
What, Ken?
What's that?
Okay.
Can somebody repeat that a little louder because I didn't quite hear?
I think you have some background noise going on. If there aren't any further questions, I'd just like to, unless you can get this up here pretty quick, we should probably adjourn. And just a reminder that there will be, there's an evaluation already waiting for you, the real one, not the one that was prematurely sent last night. The evaluation form, and we really appreciate you filling it out. It takes just a couple minutes, but it really helps because we intend to keep these webinars going on indefinitely. So.
Okay. So, well, really quick, this is the back end of Buffer, and if you can see my bar up at the top, this is the Buffer application. It's right next to the Pinterest tab. So anytime I come across things, then it will automatically feed it into there, or you can post directly. So you can actually copy and paste. Like if you just published a blog post, for example, instead of going to your different social media platforms to cut and paste the title and the link, you could just go into your Buffer backend and paste it right into here, and then schedule it. Okay. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Much appreciated. And again, if you have any questions, please email Linda. Yeah, I remembered, or myself, and I would be more than happy to try to help. And I will also be emailing Linda my LinkedIn cheat sheets. Okay? So have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Heather. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Linda, are you still on?